Hello everybody, here we are today and we're going to be talking about 4 takeaways I've had for the NHL trade deadline so far. So before we start with it, please make sure to subscribe if you're new to me or hockey, whatever the case may be. That being said, let's get on into it. So the first takeaway is that teams that are top-heavy teams or just teams that have legitimate hopes of making the Stanley Cup are not afraid of making moves. It doesn't really seem that crazy, but just from what we've seen, especially recently, you would say there are certainly teams that feel they have a good chance of winning the championship. I'm talking about teams like Colorado, Florida, and Vegas come to mind, especially Colorado made a variety of trades yesterday that we're going to talk about towards the end of this video, and then Florida made some news with the Tarasenko trade. Vegas, of course, we covered them pretty extensively as well. All have their eyes on making it to the final. Now, of course, all three of those teams have one thing in common. They've played in the Stanley Cup final in the past 2 seasons and are, again, looking to get back there. Other sides as well, like the Dallas Stars, are a team that comes to mind as they did the Tanev trade, and that is not as big as some of these other trades that we've seen to this extent. However, it is something that is noteworthy and just goes to show how some of these teams feel that they need to make these moves before the playoffs begin. And I do want to throw in the Edmonton Oilers as well, because they had a big trade involving Anaheim. And I know Edmonton isn't up there with teams like Florida or anything like that, but they are a lot closer to some of those teams than people realize. They are on a 5-game win streak. They have star power galore and are a club that I think come playoff time, people just aren't going to want to have to play. So yes, just a few things to talk about there with that, as well as the fact that some other teams that are towards the top of the standings that haven't made some big moves yet might want to start thinking about that if they are looking to pull the trigger on a trade. Now, the second takeaway that I have here is the fact that the West has gotten stronger. Now, going into the start of the season, the Eastern Conference drew a lot of attention, including me. I talked extensively about how the East looked really good. And yes, the East still does look really good, but the West going into the season kind of went under the radar a little bit. Still one of those deals when you have a 32-team league and 16 teams in a conference, you're going to be seeing a scenario where you're still going to have good sides. But I think that from what we've seen at the start of the year compared to now, especially with the trade period, Western teams especially look like they've gotten a lot better, making the path to the Stanley Cup final out in the Western Conference that much more difficult. Like I said, with some of these teams that we talked about in the first takeaway here, they had high hopes going into the year, and then they just said, why don't we make our odds even better? But by doing so, probably made their odds a little bit worse, because other teams had to go out there and make some moves too. And I think that it's more than that. You have the teams like the Vancouver Canucks, the Winnipeg Jets, that are sides that have made some moves. You know, Vancouver looking to possibly flip Lindholm. We'll talk about that too if he does end up getting traded before the end of the deadline. But still, other sides that are in this conference that look like they have hopes of making a deep run. I look at the conference and see the playoffs at the moment and say, yeah, I think there are 6 to 7 teams in the conference that could go out there and have a chance at winning the cup. Really, at the moment, if I'm being a little bit nitpicky here, I would say Nashville, and if I had to go a little bit further, maybe LA, because of the fact that they had that really long stretch where they didn't play particularly well. But there are a variety of teams that are going to be in that running to go to the Stanley Cup final, and I think that we're looking at a situation where multiple 100-point teams are just going to be battling it out. And then the third takeaway that we're going to talk about here is something that some of you are probably sick of hearing about, but something that I'm going to talk about again, and that's that Vegas gets to have their cake and eat it too. Talked to a coworker that's really big into hockey that actually does watch some of my videos, and he's like, why are you nitpicking Vegas? I think he just likes to have a little bit of fun and joke around. But it is something that we have talked about. While it is still legal, people are very angry with the fact that the Golden Knights are a team that's been so successful, that are again having some LTIR cap relief where they've been able to make some moves. Again, I've said before, I don't really have a problem with it. If they want to change the way that works, they can do so, but Vegas is just benefiting from something that is already allowed. However, looking at this team, it's still looking like they could go out there and, before they made these moves, been a club that hits the 100-point mark. That's with all the injuries they've dealt with. In fact, I would probably be willing to bet, if I could look it up, and I'm sure I will be able to look it up, at some point before the playoffs start, they're going to be like top 5 for teams that have man games lost in the season. Leonard will account for some of that, but either way, they've had a variety of injuries that have held them back, but still have been a very good side. Now they're going to be getting guys like Stone probably back for the playoffs, with those additions. Again, we're not going to be talking about it a whole lot, but it's got to be nice to be in that situation, knowing you have a good team that's probably going to be getting healthy, that's going to be getting some guys that are going to be coming back from an injury, and then more help on the way in form of trade. So just that there, we're not going to talk about it again until the playoffs, so no more Vegas and their cake and all that discussion. And then the fourth talking point here is something that I wanted to talk about, where I feel like Colorado really did well in this trade period so far. I don't really think that's really anything that is being brushed under the rug. I think a lot of people view this as a successful trade period for the Avs, but it's still something that I really liked what they were able to do. It is interesting because some of you aren't probably as keen on the Sean Walker trade. Looking at things like points, it's not going to be something that pops off the board for you, but he's having a really good year, and in my opinion is just somebody that could come on in and eat up minutes for them in the playoffs and do well in that time. Again, this is not going to be a trade where you're probably thrilled to give up a first-round pick, but I look at it as this. Colorado has cup ambitions. They've already won a championship, and by getting Walker, they have another guy added to that blue line. This is going to be helping them out, that is, seen his fair share of NHL games and is hopefully going to be able to perform even better with the Avalanche. Now, there's some other parts in this deal with how the Avalanche did a trade that I know attracted more attention, and we're going to get into that now. Sorry, I did forget to add that the Flyers did get a first-round pick out of Walker, but anyway, now talking about the Mittelstadt-Byram trade, with how I view this. I know some people are probably not a fan that Bowen Byram has been traded, because he's viewed as this very exciting young defenseman that could be a big piece to this team in the future. I'm not saying that some people say he is the next Cale Makar or anything like that, but people do see similarities. High draft pick for the Avs, a defenseman that could show a lot of promise. It just hasn't had a year that you're probably hoping for. I know going into the year, I was really hopeful that he would play a top 4 role and see a lot of opportunities, but he was shipped out to Buffalo in exchange for Casey Mittelstadt. Mittelstadt is someone that, again, you hate to say under the radar, guys that don't get enough attention, but he's had 2 really good years, and I think there's more to this trade than just saying, man, we lost a good piece in Byram. And I think it really ties to the fact that the Avalanche in free agency and the loss of Gabriel Landeskog 2 years in a row now with injuries have kind of impeded what they've wanted to do with this forward group. Nichushkin obviously has missed some time for whatever all went there and transpired in the playoffs last season. But you are looking for reinforcements, and Mittelstadt is 25 years old. He is an RFA and could be somebody that gets a long-term extension, or just an individual that gets some form of an extension to help out this team in now. And I think if he is able to go to a side that, again, is better, and he's shown promise for a Buffalo team that is still got some promise, then you'd have to imagine that he will be able to flourish and maybe become a better player and part of their future plans for this forward group. And I know some of you will say, well, we are going to miss Byram in the coming years, and I think that part could be true, but again, they have a great top pair with Taze and Makar that could alleviate some of those concerns. And Kevin Adams, of course, just has to have these young defensemen that are showing a lot of promise on this team. Plenty of talent in that blue line that is young, and hopefully everything can work out there as Buffalo looks to take a step forward next season, and maybe Byram can be part of this team that, again, makes a push for the playoffs in the coming years. But anyway, those are my takeaways here with about a day left before the deadline ends. What are your thoughts on everything so far? These are just a few of mine. We probably could have talked about more, but I didn't want the video to be too long. Anyway, please make sure to leave your thoughts down below in the comments. Make sure to like this video as well. Subscribe if you're new. Everybody stay safe. Have a great night. And you go love hockey, alright. Goodbye, Brigadiers and Brigadettes. This is your captain signing off. Have a great night.